What Work Is by Philip Levine. We stand in the rain in a long line waiting at Ford Highland Park for work. You know what work is. If you're old enough to read this, you know what work is, although you may not do it. Forget you. This is about waiting, shifting from one foot to another, feeling the light rain falling like mist into your hair, blurring your vision until you think you see your own brother ahead of you. Maybe 10 places. You rub your glasses with your fingers and, of course, it's someone else's brother. Narrower across the shoulders than yours, but with the same sad slouch. The grin that does not hide the stubbornness, the sad refusal to give in to rain, to the hours of wasted waiting, to the knowledge that somewhere ahead a man is waiting who will say, no, we're not hiring today, for any reason he wants. You love your brother. Now suddenly you can hardly stand the love flooding you for your brother who's not beside you or behind or ahead because he's home, trying to sleep off a miserable night shift at Cadillac so he can get up before noon to study his German. Works 8 hours a night so he can sing Wagner, the opera you hate most, the worst music ever invented. How long has it been since you told him you loved him? Held his wide shoulders, opened your eyes wide and said those words, and maybe kissed his cheek. You've never done something so simple, so obvious, not because you're too young or too dumb, not because you're jealous or even mean or incapable of crying in the presence of another man, no. Just because you don't know what work is.
Why did you choose that poem?
I chose this poem because it spoke to the voiceless worker, and that's one of the things that I really I just felt a connection to, because I know how it feels, just to be standing in line and, waiting all day, for something to happen. You're waiting for something better for yourself, but then it's just like at the end of the day, you still have to feed your family. So, it's kind of like that irony in there, and I just felt a big connection because it's something that I wanted to say.
How did you find the poem?
Well, after marvelous searching on the Poetry Out Loud website, my coach, Mr. Ken Belinsky, he brought it to me and he was just like, Kristen, here's the poem and, read over it, tell me what you think about it. And I read over it and I was just like, this is amazing. Like whatever man thought of this is awesome.
Has my poem led you to other poems?
Yes. Especially Miss Natasha Trethewey, who is, the new Poet Laureate of the United States. It's just introduced me to the whole world of poetry. I was already into poetry, but, I just feel that with this poem, I can, I have a bigger say. And like with Natasha's poem, it has something. Natasha's poem, Pilgrimage, I just feel like, it's just so hard to explain because I just want to say so much, and your poem speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you. I feel honored that that young people are being urged and aided to find, American poetry that is meaningful to them, that enlarges the way they look at the world. It, in some ways, redefines who they are, what they want to do. You now, having sort of saturated yourself in poetry, do you want to write poetry?
I have always wanted to write poetry, but I don't think I honestly, it just wasn't for me. I think I have a greater power to recite it and to get the word out there instead of I just want to be a voice for the poet, because sometimes, not all the times, poets get to, just go around and pass out books of their poems, but, students like me, young students, they can go out into the community and be like, look, y'all got to hear this poem. And then that's how you get the word, spread about this wonderful poem.
When you were in high school, did you share the poems you discovered with your classmates?
Oh, of course. I would walk up and down the hallway just saying poems. I would be in my coach's room all day with Mrs. Stacy Howell. And my mom, she hears it constantly. She probably can recite the whole poem to you that I just recited, because she probably knows it as many times as I've walked around the house saying what work is. So I just think it's just awesome that, people my age really find an interest in, something just so great.
It's interesting that you say this about the house, because my wife, who's been with me 50-some, we've been married 56 or 7 years, I've lost count. Oftentimes we use poems when we converse. We'll make a reference to something, and I'll make a reference to see if she's hip to what I'm talking about. And she'll come back and recite the next line. Nice. And then I'll say, okay, honey.
So that telepathic communication.
She says, she'll say things like, you don't have to test me, Phil. I've been with you 50-some years. But it isn't just my poetry. We read, poetry in English, and for many years we read poetry in Spanish. We lived in Spain a couple of years. And I was fortunate to find a woman who honored my poetry and honored the idea that I would want to become a poet. And in fact, in the first couple of years of our marriage, she supported me. Nice. And it wasn't until we had children and she saw how weak I was with them and realized if these kids are going to amount to anything, they got to have a mother's love there all the time. So then I went to work. I had started publishing, so I was able to get a job teaching writing and teaching literature and made a life out of it. So although the poem you recited does reflect a period in my life that went from, 15, 16, to 26, because I grew up during World War II, and there were jobs for everyone, because so many men had been gone off to war, and so naturally, and I came from a working class family, so we all had to kick in, and my father died when I was a kid, so we all had this sense that we were we had to contribute.
Right. So I've read, I've done my little research on you, and I've read that, you're from Detroit, correct?
Yes.
You're from Detroit, and your father worked in automobile industry, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So does that channel into what work is, the reason behind writing that particular poem?
Actually, very few of my poems are that autobiographical, but that one is. I did have the experience of going to get a job at Ford Highland Park. And I never forgot it because of the insult I felt that was being delivered to all of us. The paper said, that the employment office opened at 8 in the morning. And I got there, there were 20 or 30 guys ahead of me, because I got there just about at 8. And we stood there and stood there and stood there, and it didn't open till 10. And after I'd invested an hour and knew I had, what am I going to do? Throw the hour away? I need a job. And I thought about it though, and I thought, this isn't an accident.
Right.
They want people who are willing to stand in the rain for 2 hours to get a job. You're passing the surf test. You're a serf.
Right.
You're a born serf. We want you. And by the time I got in there, I was so angry. And you walked in and there were 4 desks. And you stood and a man sat behind one of these, and there were that many of us. And you were called, guy signaled, and you went over there. And he's down here in the seat of authority, and you're standing here, you don't know what to do with your hands.
Right.
And water's dripping off you. We didn't have umbrellas because that was sissy stuff.
Right, totally understand.
I was probably about 22. And when I got up there, and he asked me, what sort of position were you looking for? Using that kind of language,
Right.
And I said, actually, I want a job like yours. He looked at me. He said, are you serious? I said, yeah, I'd like to be able to sit behind a desk and have people come in and say sir to me and be nice to me. And that seems like you probably take a 2-hour break for lunch. You don't care how people wait. I didn't get the job, obviously. By this time, I didn't want it.
Right.
And instead, I went to Chevy, where I got the same treatment. But I couldn't resist being a fat mouth. As many people can tell you, including my dear friend Rob Casper, who runs this office, I can't resist saying sir, anything. I just don't have a censor there.
Right.
Yeah.
Just totally understand.
Yeah, so when I wrote that poem, that came to me. And also, there was another thing that happened. When I wrote that poem, my twin brother, I'm a twin, an identical twin, my twin brother had gotten married. And it wasn't a harmonious marriage. And his wife wasn't nuts about me. And so I wasn't seeing that much of him. And I would see him in other men's faces.
Right.
And I would read that thing of, I think it's my brother. That happened to me over and over. And a few times I even said to Eddie, and guy'd look, no. And I finally told him about this, and he said, the same thing happens to me. I'll say, Phil. And I thought, we were so inseparable for about 18 years, and then we went our separate ways. And I don't know, just that day I was thinking about him. What sponsored the poem, this is nuts. I was watching television, I think it was that Sunday show, 60 Minutes. And they did a program about a father and son, who beat a man to death. The man was Chinese. It was in Detroit. And he was in a restaurant. And they thought he was Japanese. And the son had lost his job in a factory. And they were blaming the Japanese auto industry. And they beat him to death. And I was just so enraged by this, and so disappointed in my city and in my country as well. Shamed that people that I grew up with would behave this way. I mean, it was just, well. The poem, however, is, I think, is kind of saved by the brother. There's the anger in the beginning, but there's real love. My brother, has meant so much to me, and we're still around, both at 84. He became a painter, and I
both
became
in the art world.
Oh yeah, yeah, and so it's been wonderful. It's been a great life for me.
Well, that's good. I really just think that this poem just shows how, over time you lose touch, but at the same time, at heart, you still love your brother, without a doubt. And it's just that this poem really just conveys, how long, like when you said, when you wrote, how long has it been since you told him you loved him?
Yeah.
And that really spoke to me about, how long has it been since, you told your mom you loved her, or how long has it been since you told your dad, your friends, or, your teacher even,
Yes.
So it's just, when you think about how long has it been since you've done this, then you start to say, wait, no, I need to go do this right now, because you never know what could happen to that person.
That's right, especially if you're 84. Well, this has been wonderful.
It's been wonderful.
I want to congratulate you for what you've given me, and I hope I hear wonderful things from you in the future.
Thank you. I just want to congratulate you of what you've given me. You've given the Poetry Foundation, me personally, just a voice, and the reason why, oh, what am I trying to say? That when you write poems like this, and when you write good works and different things like this, you give kids like me a stance, a place where we can just take charge and say, okay, this is what's going on in the world. Instead of just getting on, TV and just blabbing our mouths, let's twist this around a little bit, and let's interpret it into a poem and do things like that. So I'm just really excited, and I'm very honored to meet you.
Well, to be speaking meaningfully to people your age is what you dream about when you give your life to writing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.